joining us. Today is the second day of the month of Kartik. Um, so we hope you're experiencing, the flowing mercy of Kartik this month. And so we'll just continue reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where we are in chapter 12. And we've been reading about Maharaj Pariksit and how his qualities have been glorified and brought into focus. Today we'll talk about how Maharaj Pariksit, the very name Pariksit, I think we talked about this yesterday. I think we can just read that again. I think we should read that. It's such a beautiful point. We can just read the translation maybe.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki.
So his son would become famous in the world as Pariksit, examiner, because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus, he would come to constantly contemplate him. I guess I really like this point here, that how the word Pariksit means examiner. And I was just brought to mind the statement that an unexamined life is not worth living, and that how this process of examination is something that we should always carry. And even as we are reading this text, this contemplation is such an integral part of our reading. Because sometimes I was just listening to this morning, that we could be reading, but there's no contemplation, there's no examination. And when there's no examination and no contemplation, then it does not get assimilated within the heart. So it stays very heady. But Maharaj Pariksit, on the other hand, was constantly in this mood of deliberation, examination, contemplation. And that's how, we start, that knowledge actually becomes real. And then an ounce of wisdom is more powerful than, tons of bookish knowledge.
That's a very good point. I guess it all boils down to the impression in our heart. That's what Jiva Goswami is saying. These impressions are very powerful in our life. And the more impressions we can accumulate in our heart of Krishna and his devotees and his service, these impressions is what carry us to the next life. This is the print that creates our next life. So the Vedic culture is structured in such a way that, right, the whole life is with samskaras or impressions, and from start to finish they are just a string of impressions, and the life is organized in such a way that there's more and more chance to come in contact with Krishna. Prabhupada shares his own life here. He says that there is a practical example in my personal life in this connection. My father was a pure devotee of the Lord, and when I was only 4 or 5 years old, my father gave me a couple of forms of Radha and Krishna. In a playful manner, I used to worship these deities along with my sister, and I used to imitate the performances of a neighboring temple of Radha Govinda. By constantly visiting this neighboring temple and copying the ceremonies in connection with my own deities of play, I developed a natural affinity for the Lord.
31.
Sarajaputro vabride ashu shukla ivodupa apuryamana pitrebhi kastabhir ivaso anvaham.
As the moon in its waxing fortnight develops day after day, so the royal prince Pariksit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facilities of his guardian grandfathers. In a very poetic way, that the son, he was born, he had such a head start in life, so to speak. And now he has all these great teachers, great guardians, great parents who are guiding him. So it's very fortunate.
I guess the whole society was organized in such a way that everybody got the full facility to grow spiritually and be materially well situated, so they could focus on spiritual progress.
I had a little bit of pinprick that I wanted to share with this, that also the culture promoted, like one thing that we see here is that there is no embarrassment in being the son and the grandson and the great grandson of so and so person, right? And they were happy and comfortable to take on those values. But in modern times, somehow or the other, we think that in order for us to come on our own, we have to somehow recreate or refine, those same values. And so as a result, sometimes we may get the head start, but we may not be able to take advantage of that head start. And so, that's why we see.
I have to prove everything myself. I don't need anybody's guardianship or help. I'm good myself. I'm good.
And one of the reasons for that is because in the name of being good, there are all these people or groups of vested interest who are then able to come and grab our children and be able to take away from that sort of the protection that can allow them, these impressions and put their own impressions, which is actually the bottom line of those impressions are profit.
Yeah, because when these other organizations or corporations, they are like vultures. So we're just waiting to get into the head of people, and they give the impression that, hey, you are independent, you are on your own, you are making these choices on your own, but actually somebody else is making those choices for them.
Yeah, because the real, they say that what is the value of real estate? Actually, there's no better real estate than a person's mind. And once you've occupied that real estate, and the sooner you've occupied that real estate, no one can throw you out of that real estate.
Yeah.
And it's, and it's vicious actually when you think about it, because these are innocent, tender, fragile brains, impressions that, and then the heartache that follows from that.
They get butchered by impressions of illicit sex, drugs, alcohol, bullying, and all these unfavorable things. So it's kind of very
getting themselves into trouble and then getting their own parents into trouble.
Yakshamano Ashwamedhena Gyati Droha Jihasaya Raja Labda Dhano Dhadyo Anyatra Karadandayo.
Just at this time, King Yudhishthira was considering performing a horse sacrifice to get freed from sins incurred from fighting with kinsmen, but he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside of fines and tax collection. So in order to perform that sacrifice, I guess he needed some wealth.
And these sacrifices, these kings used to perform, the main reason Maharaj Yudhishthira was performing the sacrifice was to glorify Krishna. And to also, the secondary goal was to purify themselves of sins. But in these sacrifices, the whole kingdom was invited, and everybody a lot of charity was given. Everybody came out very happy from the sacrifices. So it wasn't like a self-serving thing that they used to do. Tadavi pretam alaksha bhrataro chutachodita dhanam prahinam ajaru uddicham disibhurishaha.
Understanding the hearty wishes of the king, his brothers, as advised by the infallible Lord Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north, left by King Maruta. So I guess they collected.
There was, according to Mahabharata, there was this very famous King Maruta who had a lot of gold, and everything that he did was basically made of gold. Even when he fed people, plates and spoons and everything was made of gold. And then they would after eating in those things once, they would just throw away them in a pile dump. So, and Arjuna
Prabhu,
yeah, now you can hear us.
Our internet connection went away and came back. So can you hear us now?
Yes, Prabhuji.
You have to share the screen.
Oh, share everything went.
By those riches, the king could procure the ingredients for 3 horse sacrifices. Thus, Yudhishthira, who was very fearful after the battle of Kurukshetra, pleased Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead.
So when you hear these words like horse sacrifice, or it seems like they were sacrificing an animal, but actually the animal was not actually sacrificed. The Brahmanas used to chant these mantras, very powerful mantras, where the horse would actually receive a new body of a human being or a demigod, a higher body they would receive. So it seemed like there was no animal killing involved.
That's what Prabhupada explains, right?
Again and again,
yeah. Because I think that's kind of what happened, that people just started thinking that these were just animal killing. And so in the name of the Vedas, in the name of these sacrifices, they started performing animal slaughter. And that's what Lord Buddha had to come and say, stop it, like just stop these animal sacrifices.
You don't have to do that anymore.
You don't have to do that.
And especially Prabhupada says that in these, the reason they had to collect so much wealth, because the Brahmanas were given profuse charity. They used to have enormous amount of ghee, which is the butter derived from milk, and then therefore it was a very costly affair, and therefore it's not possible to perform these Vedic yagyas or sacrifices in today's day and age. The Prabhupada says the best sacrifice in today's day and age is the chanting of Krishna's names.
See, here Prabhupada was saying that the horse sacrifice, yagya or cow sacrifice, should not be misunderstood as a process of killing animals. In fact, they were rejuvenated. On the contrary, animals offered for sacrifice were rejuvenated to a new span of life by the transcendental power of chanting the Vedic hymns, which, if properly chanted, are different from what is understood by the common layman. The Veda, there is no possibility of such methodical chanting of the Vedic hymns by so-called Brahmanas or priests of the present age. The untrained descendants of the twice-born families are no more like their forefathers, and thus they are counted amongst the Shudras or once-born men. The once-born man is unfit to chant the Vedic hymns, and therefore there's no practical utility of chanting the original hymns. And therefore we have the Hare Krishna mantra, right? The Sankirtan Yagya.
One can actually derive much more benefit from chanting Krishna's name even once than these sacrifices.
Yeah.
Ahuto Bhagavan Ragya Yajayitva Dvije Nipam Uvasa Katichim Masan Suhridam Priyakamya.
Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, being invited to the sacrifices by Maharaj Yudhishthira, saw to it that they were performed by qualified twice-born Brahmanas. After that, for the pleasure of the relatives, the Lord remained a few months.
So these sacrifices were actually, in another sense, an excuse for Maharaj Yudhishthira to keep inviting Krishna again and again. And then every time he would come, he'd spend a few months with them. So it's all about Krishna's satisfaction. Tato ragya bhyanugyata krishnaya sahabandhuvi yayodvaravatim brahman sarjuno yadubhir vritaha.
O Shanaka, thereafter the king, the Lord, having bade farewell to King Yudhishthira, Draupadi and other relatives, started for the city of Dwaraka, accompanied by Arjuna and other members of the other dynasty.
This is the second time he's going back to Dwaraka. So
yeah.
Earlier we saw how he left after the battle of Kurukshetra was over.
Right.
That time he left.
When Uttara's womb was attacked.
Yeah, now he came back again for another sacrifices. Again he's leaving.
Okay, it's kind of interesting that we were talking about Maharaj Pariksit and then the story just switched to a yagya. Kind of, right? It's a little curious.
So this ends this chapter.
Yeah, this ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 12th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Birth of Maharaj Pariksit. I think we can just continue.
Yeah, we can start with chapter.
I think 16, is it?
16. So now we are getting into the life of Maharaj Pariksit. He is born, he has been blessed, his glories have been described. So now everybody is curious to know what is he going to do? Such a precocious child. Let's see what he does. So now we'll move to
16.
Chapter 16, how Pariksit received the age of Kali. So
you have to do advanced view.
And by the way, tomorrow we'll have a quiz on chapter 14. So please get ready, at least read the chapter 14 thoroughly. Tata Pariksit Dvijavarya Sikshaya Mahi Mahabhagavata Sasashaha Tata Hi Sutyam Abhijatako Vida Samadhishan Vipramahad Gunastatha.
Sutta Goswami said, O learned Brahmanas, Maharaj Pariksit then began to rule over the world as a great devotee of the Lord under the instructions of the best of the twice-born Brahmanas. He ruled by those great qualities who were foretold by expert astrologers at the time of his birth.
So it's coming together.
Yeah.
The qualities were not just like a one-time event, but he actually matured into a great leader. And then I think the important point here is two important points. Rule as a great devotee, he was ruling as a great devotee, and under the instructions of great Brahmanas and other Vaishnavas.
Keep going. Keep going.
So these rulers were not like independent. They worked under and ruled under the guidance of these great sages like Manu, Yagyavalka, Parashara, and Maharaj Pariksit. He took guidance from Kripacharya. who was also there at the time of the Pandavas. So they always had good guidance. It wasn't, and then their guidance was in accordance with what Krishna desired. Nowadays, it is all by voting and assembly coming together and voting about this law and that law. That keeps on changing. It's all motivated by lobbying, corporate interest, and personal interest. But at this time, it was all guided by Brahmanas who were equal to everybody. Sautarasya tanayam upayema iravatim janmajeyadin suchaturastashyam utpadayat sutan.
King Pariksit married the daughter of King Uttara and begot 4 sons headed by Maharaj Janmajaya.
So his progenies are being described. Janmajaya is the one who will later on hear the Mahabharata, original Mahabharata from Vaishampayana, who is the disciple of Vyasadeva. Ajaharashvamedham strin gangayam bhuridakshinam saradvattam gurum kritva devayatrakshi gocharaha.
Maharaj Pariksit, after having selected Kripacharya for guidance as a spiritual master, performed 3 horse sacrifices on the banks of the Ganges. They were executed with sufficient rewards for the attendants, and at these sacrifices, even the common man could see demigods. So this is another interesting thing, that back in the day, there would be interplanetary travel and the demigods would visit. And because of the power of these sacrifices, they could actually see, these demigods. And so we can imagine that it was a civilization where they had some, powerful spiritual experiences.
And these demigods would not just come just for the sake of watching some sacrifice. The reason these demigods came for Pariksit or Yudhishthira Maharaj sacrifices, because they could see how they were such powerful devotees. And these sacrifices were filled with glorification of Krishna, chanting of Krishna's glorification, and these demigods themselves would benefit by attending these sacrifices. And that's why they attended these sacrifices.
Just one more thing.
Nijagraho jasavira kalindig vijaye kvachit Ripalinga dharam sudran gnantam go mithunam pada.
Once when Maharaj Pariksit was on his way to conquer the world, he saw the master of Kali Yuga, the personification of Kali Yuga, who was lower than a Shudra, disguised as a king and hurting the legs of a cow and a bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishment. Yeah, I think we should. Not the whole thing, maybe. Let's see. So I guess, yeah, you want to read? So we see here that how Maharaj Pariksit, he would come out and travel across the town or the city and try to see, and in this case, of course, he was on his way to conquer. Maybe he was on, on some expedition, right?
Yeah.
And so on the way, he sees that there is this personification of Kali, and he's actually dressed up as a king. He's disguised as a king, so he's presenting himself as a very responsible and as a person of authority, but actually he's hurting the legs of a cow and a bull. So we'll see how this cow and bull are not ordinary, and so now he wants to offer him sufficient punishment, because I think earlier we read that in the Vedic system, animals were citizens too, and anybody who was born within a particular kingdom, they were considered to be subjects, whether they were an animal or a tree or a forest or water, the lakes, the rivers, everything was part of, they were all citizens, and it was the king's duty to actually protect them. So it's 10:30. Okay, so we'll stop. So the story changes here. From here on, we're going to read about how, why did he punish, and who was this person, and so on and so forth. It's a very interesting section. So we'll pause here and take reflections, and if you have any questions connected to this chapter, previous chapter, or if any other question for that matter, we can take it.
Hare Krishna Mataji Prabhuji.
Yes, Bhuvaneshwari.
I just want to understand this, where you say that King Pariksit was guided by twice born Brahmanas. What does that mean?
Yeah, the twice born Brahmanas, basically a Brahman, Dvija, it's called Dvija. Dvija means who's born twice, which means one first is the natural birth, biological birth, and then a Brahmana takes initiation later on from the spiritual master, and the spiritual master gives the mantra, and by that is considered the real birth. So the biological birth is just okay, we got a birth, but the real birth happens when we actually embark on the spiritual journey and make a commitment and accept a spiritual master. That is the real birth. So that's why they call twice born, because they all had accepted that initiation or diksha from the guru.
And also the other, significance of having a twice birth is that this person is now no longer, it's understood that when a person has received his second birth or received initiation, that means he's no longer acting acting on the basis of his own mind and intelligence, but rather he's following the great teachers. And so therefore the wisdom that he's imparting or the words that he's speaking are actually coming through a line of teachers rather than his own concoction. Right? So that makes his statements bona fide or authoritative.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a bane of our current Kali Yuga, where you see people who have who say whatever and get away with it. Just the other day, I was reading an article where a very, very popular teacher in India right now was saying that, actually in the entire history of Indian spirituality, there are no authorized books of knowledge. And I was shocked that, how in Kali Yuga, it is characterized by, the cheater and the cheated, that people are saying ridiculous things and getting away with it. And the reason why they're able to say those things is because neither the speaker nor the hearer have any basis in any authorized or bona fide scriptures.
And they have not themselves taken shelter of any bona fide guru. Therefore, their mind is their guru, and so is the minds of other people.
Yeah.
And like attracts like, so it just creates a very
it's
disharmonious situation.
Yeah. Anybody else?
So the king himself would set the example that, hey, I'm the king, and I'm also accepting shelter from a spiritual teacher. So every citizen would be then inclined to do the same.
Yeah. And what kind of a spiritual teacher?
What kind of a spiritual teacher?
Yeah, it's such an important thing, because without that, and then I guess the other thing that happens is that when you just simply accept any charismatic person, because the way they drape the robes of their around,
they shake their head, or the way they speak,
the way they drape their chadar around them, it's so attractive. Then what happens is sooner or later, these things never stay hidden. Something comes out, and then people lose faith, and then the entire spiritual dimension is written off as just being something where people are cheating. But in order to not be cheated, one has to really, really, one has to really be very careful where one places one's trust and faith. Definitely not on a person who has no spiritual master guiding him, and who has no foundation in any scriptures.
Hare Krishna Mataji and Prabhuji.
Yes, correct.
I was just thinking, in the kingdom, the importance of the animals too was equally to the human beings. And nowadays, like, it's good to see so many people raising pets in their life and learning so much from them. It's in both the ways. And I just wanted to know a little bit more about taking care of a cow and how it is so auspicious, and the food we get from it, and the sins incurred if it is killed, and all those things. Little bit more light on that. And they say if you gift a cow, and like the whole importance. I just have
Yeah, the cow is considered the most important animal in Vedic civilization, because first of all, cow is most dear to Krishna. And you see in any pastimes of Krishna is right from the very early age. Krishna starts taking the calves to the forest to nurture them, feed them, and then when he grows up, he takes the cows. So Krishna is very fond of cows, and therefore the cow is, because we worship Krishna, we also worship and respect whoever Krishna worships. So Krishna himself worships cows. And also from cow, Prabhupada says a very important ingredient was derived, which was milk, and milk was turned into ghee, and ghee was used for these Vedic sacrifices. So the cow was basically connected to spiritual upliftment, and everything about cow is used is used in worship, like the cow milk, the cow, the yogurt, the ghee, and even cow urine and cow dung is also used in worship in Krishna. When Krishna's deity is worshipped once a year on his birthday or on any important ceremony, then all these 5 things, they are called Panchagavya, or 5 important things that come from cow. They are utilized in worshiping Krishna, and Krishna becomes very satisfied. Therefore, cow is considered a sacred animal, and then the cow is also considered mother because the milk of the cow is used to feed the baby, and just like the mother's milk is used for the baby. So cow is also considered mother. So on all those fronts, cow is worshipable, and therefore the killing of cows is strictly prohibited in Vedic culture. And there's a great amount of karmic reaction that comes from killing anybody, especially killing a cow.
Anybody else?
Thank you. I really like the point, Mataji, the second birth of any human being who is getting the like it's equal to the second life with their spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just really like that.
Thank you. Thank you for reflecting that. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah, I also want to reflect a point which I really liked, that the more impressions that we can make of Krishna and his devotees, then that will help us in our life to move forward. It will develop spiritual impressions.
Yeah. They say that the best kind of learning is where, we experience something, right? We directly, we are hearing it and then we're experiencing it, and that experience becomes very tangible and very real. And and that's it creates a permanent changes our the patterns of thinking and feeling, and it becomes very natural for us. And bhakti is actually natural. And so how does it become natural? When we start experiencing it, and then, naturally, then we are drawn. That's where we want to go eventually. That's where we are heading, is to make this process natural and something where the heart is just naturally drawn to it, just like the river is drawn to the ocean. Isn't that where we want to go? Yeah, that's where yeah. Please, yes, Amrita. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to share when you said that, the meaning of the name Pariksit is to examine. And I just checked, it also means to be tested, or the tested one. So, just thinking that how, it was true that he did get tested, in his lifetime, as he was the, most, powerful ruler. At the same time, his spiritual side was tested too.
Yeah, it's a very nice point, Amrita. And this is actually, a tested devotee is a trusted devotee. And we always see that, right? You see Sanatan Goswami is tested to the core. Haridas Thakur, tested to the core. And actually, a test is kind of like you squeeze a lemon, what comes out? Lemon juice. And when a devotee is tested, then you know what comes out.
And that test, in that test, what appears to happen is that Krishna seems to disappear. And you're going through suddenly you're going through some difficult time in your life, and you feel, Krishna, I worshipped you all my life. And now when I need you the most, where have you disappeared? And it really tests our faith and trust in Krishna, that sometimes people break down and say, hey, I don't believe in Krishna. I gave you my life. Now this is how you treat me. I'll find somebody else. And or I'll go somewhere else. But a true devotee, like we'll see Maharaj, Pariksit and Yudhishthira, they stuck on. After even going through so much difficulty, their faith in Krishna actually increased. And that's the meaning of being tested.
Also, I've seen that after the test, you get your grade. We've seen it, and this is Bhagavatam, but it's also real Bhagavatas. We've seen that there are devotees we have seen who have gone through some really, really grueling experiences. But then you see them going through it. And then after that, you see that Krishna rewards them with something that what they lost is nothing in comparison to what they have gained in the process. And it increases your faith, because then you think, oh, okay, so there's a plan. Sometimes the plan may happen in like 2 months, 2 years, so you can see the natural cause, the cause and effect. Sometimes you may not see the cause and effect right away, but we can be rest assured that, just like Bali Maharaj, everything was taken away and he was arrested like a prisoner, treated like, in such a humiliating manner. But there was a better thing that was handed over. And again, going back to Bhaktilata's example yesterday, sometimes we throw the buttermilk, but we throw the yogurt before we can get the butter, we think doesn't work, I'm just going to throw it out. But we just have to, again, just be patient and just continue offering our obeisances. I can assure you, you'll look back and you'll say, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Yeah. We just have to give it time.
Just give it time. It's very interesting, the word Pariksit goes both ways. Here, Maharaj Pariksit is examining Krishna. Where can I find Krishna?
Krishna's examining.
And just continuously looking for Krishna. And here, Krishna is also, Krishna likes to get surprised by his devotees. What extent my devotees can go for me. And Krishna is also like, he's just waiting. Okay, he's also examining his devotees, not just always to test them, but also to derive that transcendental pleasure. Okay, how my devotees going to surprise me next with their love and devotion. So Krishna is also in one sense Pariksit.
Yeah, he is definitely. I think Mother Teresa, said that, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And then she said, well, I wish that he would not trust me so much. So but still, the fact is that it's not a trivial thing, but at the same time, and this is where the association of devotees is very powerful. If you stay in the association of devotees, you can overcome great mountains and great trials and great tribulations and retain your faith. But another thing that happens is when we are going through a very difficult time, we tend to close the doors and windows and we tend to shut everyone out and say, I don't need anyone. I don't want anyone. I don't want anyone to even find out what I'm going through. And then you are just alone. So now you're alone with your difficulty and your mind. Not a good combination at all. Yeah, that's the time that you need even more so the strength of other devotees carrying you. And that's what it means actually to be carried by Krishna. It means to be carried by the devotees.
And that's the third meaning of Pariksit is there, that you're always examined. You're always under the gaze, for example, or under the guidance of the Vaishnavas. You're always examined by Vaishnavas.
That's nice.
So that's another meaning for Pariksit.
Pariksit, yeah.
So you're examining, Krishna is examining, and you're also being examined under the guidance of,
yeah.
And then you're protected from all three sides.
Very nice.
So I had like one second realization that I wanted to share when we were talking about knowledge and wisdom. So, while we can get all the knowledge, from, the books that we're reading, but for that knowledge to convert into wisdom, we need that association with the devotees.
Definitely.
Definitely.
There is no substitute to a life lived with Krishna. Just like you can't rush a relationship. Like I remember when we've been together for 25 years. The way I knew you back then, now the way I know you now, it's completely different, right? So it's the same with Krishna. That the more number of years you live with, in Krishna consciousness, the more your relationship will deepen. And Shringar, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just this point that to be examined by the devotees, but that also means that the other devotee also has a responsibility that they allow themselves to be examined.
Yeah. That is a very good point. I guess if I understand your point correctly, you're saying that we tend to block that examination by pretending that we don't, is that what you're saying? That we don't reveal ourselves?
Both, I think we don't reveal ourselves, and also we may not have the eyes of discrimination as to who should be. There are so many points, I think, who should we accept as a person who can examine us, and also like you said, that if we don't reveal ourselves, then how can we be examined?
I think Maharaj Pariksit, that's a very good point, that who do we, And I think, yeah, that's what, that's where discrimination comes into the picture. And we we can feel very happy, and we can pray for that. And at the same time, we can feel very grateful if we can have, and like Mukund Maharaj always says, even if there is just one or two, one can, one can actually cross over this material ocean if one simply even has one or two devotees in one's life that one can reveal one's mind to, and feel, experience their guidance and their shelter. So, okay, I guess Radhika, go ahead.
Yeah, a simple point, but I really like the qualification that was given, that you have to be a devotee and you have to follow the instructions of your spiritual master and the gurus, right? It was like Kripacharya. So I felt that I think everything can come in the fold of these 2 points as either being a leader or being a part of any like in any leadership position, right? So
Yeah.
it can actually save you from big troubles, and you can, I think, it's actually helped me summarize the point that when we use the point servant leadership, that you just have to be a follower and then you can become a leader. So I am not able to actually summarize it properly, but there was a moment that time which I felt very deeply. So.
Nice, thank you. Thank you very much. This is a wonderful association, and both of us are very grateful for this association, as we have also experienced the highs and the lows of life, and we have derived so much strength from just being here with all of you and hearing from you and sharing Srimad Bhagavatam with you and chanting with you as well. So thank you so much for, day after day, creating this community for us as well, right? So with that, we will now get into